Hello and welcome to the Watson Weekend, your weekly dose of e-commerce entertainment. I am your host, Rick Watson.
Hi, it's Jessica Lesesky. How's it going, Rick?
It's going great. I think we're both on the struggle bus today
A little bit,
following.
little bit. I'm gonna be honest. I had nine 14-year-old boys at my house.
Oof.
They were up till about 1:30 a.m. Living life, living large. They say that your house should always be the hangout house because then you always know where
Uh-huh.
your kids are.
There's that.
I don't. Who is the they here that
Yeah.
are making these kinds of bold statements? Because it was rough. I'm just saying it's rough. And my house smells like 14-year-old boys. Like 9 of them were in here, and there is no candle strong enough to get rid of that scent. I'm just
No,
gonna
the
lay it out there.
candles, the potpourri,
Yeah.
none of it works.
None of it is helping. So, how about you? How was the day?
Yeah,
First
so
Halloween, right?
yeah, my daughter's first Halloween. That was super exciting. We were a giraffe family.
Oh, I like it.
And so that was super fun. I don't know if you remember New York Halloween. It's
Yeah.
like Mardi Gras in the city. I mean, it's like crazy numbers of people, I think, come
Yes.
into the city and they
Yes.
infiltrate every neighborhood. And there's people like, how does Halloween work in New York City? Just like imagine millions of people just dressed up on the streets going bananas.
Yeah. I
Trick or
remember.
treating at storefronts, and
Yes.
then there were
Yes.
like open
Yes.
blocks with no cars. It's crazy.
Yes. That's where also you get like the celebrities are just like us. You see lots of celebrity sightings. I remember I met Bridget Monahan, who,
Look
that
at
was
you.
Tom Brady's, the baby daddy. Like this is the other baby out of wedlock. Yeah. So they all
Heyo.
the stars come out to play just like everybody. But I'm glad you
Exactly.
guys had a wonderful Halloween, and we're ready for now the big dance. So before we get there of like what that means and what we're talking about here, I wanted to recognize that this week's show is brought to you guys by Maze. They are a wonderful partner. They're also going to be a proud sponsor of our first in-person event at NRF in January, which we're happy to start teasing out. That's going to be really fun.
Yeah, we're excited about that. What you're coming in is a summit presentation based on the state of 2025 retail, panel discussion with some great guests that we're cooking up, and a live recording of the Watson Weekend
That's right.
featuring yours
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna do it live, Bill Riley style. So it'll be fun. And actually, before we get into the show, when I talk about this being the big dance, I think producer Vinny's going to cue something up because we have now moved on. The holidays are here, friends,
Wow.
and the Queen. This is brought to us by the Queen, Miss Mariah Carey herself.
This is great.
Yeah. He's really locking it in here. Can you hit that high note, Rick?
I cannot know.
All right, guys. It is 100% official. When Mariah says it's time to go down, it's going down.
Yeah. Mariah, yeah, I think Mariah really tells us every year when it's Christmas,
She
and
sure does.
it's Christmas time, and so we're excited about that. Like the Addams Family reference and putting getting the Christmas season started.
Yeah.
Before Thanksgiving, of course, which
Well, 100%. And like I said, it is the pre Black Friday. We talked about this a lot. Like, is Black Friday forever a real thing? Because I feel like the discounts have already been coming. And I have a feeling as our friend Nick Kaplan comes on in Kaplan's Corner, he always has some great words of wisdom to talk about there.
yes, I hear he's going to talk about search, conversational commerce, OpenAI, all kinds of interesting thing. If you didn't hear, OpenAI launched its own search engine just this week.
Yeah, that's pretty big news. We've also got some additional news to cover in our headline hangover, and then I think we're going to get into some earnings later. So that's the Notebook guy's favorite.
This is really Christmas for me
It really
when it's
is.
earnings season. So I'm
It sure
excited about
is.
that.
I know. All right. So we're going to get started with a couple of things. And the first thing we're going to hit on is the merry-go-round in CEO turnover. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Rick,
Hmm.
where there was the big shakeup at Nike. And the question we had was like, is more coming? And the answer is yes, friends. People are not waiting for the end of the year. This is more to me a signal of not throwing in the towel, but saying like the damage essentially has been done and it's time
Right.
to reset. Why wait until January? So the first one was the real. And
Mm.
the big news there is that John Coral is out. They are promoting,
Suddenly, by the way, like
yeah.
he gone, quit fast.
He's out of there. And the interesting thing is, Karen Katz, who's the chairperson of the board, was quoted. She and John go way back from
Hmm.
their Neiman's days. So I think that was like also just kind of a little interesting thing. But essentially, they're promoting their president and chief operating officer, Rati Lesesky. And I hope I did not butcher that last name. I'm
Yeah.
100% sure I probably did.
Yes.
But essentially, that he's coming in. They're bringing this not necessarily fresh talent, but bringing this perspective from within, which was a similar trend we saw with Nike. And it sounds like that's a pattern we're seeing in some of these other shakeups, Ross stores, and also Amazon grocery, right, Rick?
Yeah, Ross CEO is out, and they have a new CEO taking over, and so Boot Barn lost their CEO. Boot Barn, by the way, I've always loved that name for whatever. It's like a special place in my heart for Boot Barn.
I
Their
do too,
CEO,
because I called on them a lot when I was like
right?
back in my B2B SaaS days. And I was like, I just need to land this account because it'd be super fun. And like, who doesn't need some free Western boots?
Exactly. So Boot Barn CEO is now the CEO of Ross. We've talked about Nike and Starbucks in the past. Real Peloton, also a new
Hmm.
company has a CEO, and I think one of the trends I think this is happening. Why is this cyclically seem to be happening in the last few months? I think we're kind of officially out of the post-COVID period, and so like we had
Hmm.
this sort of pre-COVID time,
Yep.
crazy COVID time.
Crazy
Some
growth.
CEOs like didn't survive that because Peloton CEO in particular Peloton is like their third CEO in the last
Hmm.
4 years. Um, so now we're kind of out of the post-COVID time, and now investors are like, okay, we need a plan for the next 5 years.
Hmm.
Now that things are beginning, like we're officially like it's 2024, folks. Like we need to move on with our life, and we need a CEO with a vision for the next 5 years. And so
Yeah.
that is really, I think, what is happening at some of these companies.
Yeah. And so the Peloton CEO came from Ford um, most recently.
Which is an odd choice, you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some other kind of background there, right? We didn't he have a stint at Apple for a
Yeah.
little while too. So, but yeah, for sure. Do you feel like with some of these, like let's take Peloton as an example, is it going to be more of the same, or do you think that there's going to be some big shakeups that happen within these organizations?
Yeah, I think there has to be shakeups. I think most of these companies are going to reduce expenses. It looks like Starbucks is bringing back their condiment bar. I wanted to talk about that. That has to be somewhere in this news.
Okay, let's break it down.
Break it down.
Are condiments the path to prosperity for Starbucks?
It's
Inquiring minds want to know.
it's possible. But anyway, the CEOs seem to be turning over. I would not be surprised to see more CEO turnover in the last few years or in the next few months to really narrow down kind of the next couple of years of prosperity for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a comment here. I always choke when a company turns their COO as CEO instead of the CFO or CMO. Usually, it indicates cost cutting instead of exciting new directions. What are your thoughts on that, Rick?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I tend to agree. I think 100% you're correct. Look, the role of 2025 in terms of a CEO, where does the CEO fit in? it has to be about new customers and new markets. Where is the growth going to come from? And so
Yeah.
if your CEO is focused on expenses and the bottom line, you're going to cut your way out of a job essentially,
Right.
you're going to cut your way out of the market. So trying to figure out, where do we expand? How do we invest? Not that we don't need to optimize the business, we do, but you can't do that at the expense of growth.
You can't. And I feel like that's you wrote about this a couple of, maybe it was this week or previous week on LinkedIn. It will be a forcing function that companies have got to come together and take the holistic investments, looking at the P&Ls of various business lines and saying, where do we want to place our bets and what are we going to invest in for growth, which might mean shedding other divisions. And you see Amazon doing this all the time, right? They're like, we're getting
Right.
out of this, we're exiting this, because we're going to go double down here for, those favorite buzzword
Yeah.
terms. We're doubling down, we're getting the tiger team together.
I know.
We're all going to make this happen. But the reality is it takes that maniacal level of focus and everyone cross functionally getting together to go row in the same direction, and probably ends up meaning you're getting rid of or you're shedding the things that just aren't going to make the impact in the next 3 to 5 years, right?
Yeah, I think you need to have a few different investment horizons. What are you doing in the next year? What are you doing in the next 3 to 5 years? And so those are the those are the areas that we need to be able to see from these companies. Some of them, the reality is, can a new CEO fix a broken business model? Going back to Rent the Runway for a second. I mean, I'm sorry, not the Rent the Runway, to Real
Real,
Real
real.
for the
Yeah.
Real Real for I always I don't know, I always confuse these companies.
We're getting
Um,
real here.
yeah,
Real
exactly. The Real
renting.
Real, that the company has been profitability challenged over the years. Over the past couple of years, profitability has been slowly improving.
Yeah.
The new CEO has been in many different roles over the course of the company's history. And so the question is, like, did John Coral get credit for some of these profitability improvements? And now the new CEO come in, could they accelerate that?
Mhm.
That's one thing I'm watching,
Yeah.
um, from the Real Real.
So my last question, and then we can move on. I think 'cause we knew this was going to be a little bit heavier of a headline hangover topic. What do you think the timeframes are that these CEOs are operating on? Is it they have, there wasn't long for the last Peloton CEO, what he had about 2 to 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah,
If I'm
think about 2
remembering correctly.
years. Yeah, look, I think some of these folks, there's 2 years is the horizon, because
Mm,
you these companies are on a short leash and investors have lost patience with them to some
mhm,
extent. And
mhm.
so it's almost like, come in, make changes, grow or perish. It's almost
Right.
like an up or out type of situation. And I think that's what I'm expecting out of these companies. It will be very interesting to see what comes to fruition here.
Yeah, I agree. And for many of these companies, the bold decisions have to come super fast. And so it's not a wait and see. And I wonder if that's also leading to some of the decision to hire from within or promote from within versus net
Mm.
new. You don't have the runway to let the CEO have 6 months to learn the business, build the right rapport with teams. You probably need someone to come in and move faster. And I wonder if that's the driving force too of, hey, we don't need to clean slate this thing. We just need to keep moving and make tougher decisions.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we've seen that dynamic play out in another story that we're going to get to in a second here. PayPal, the CEO, Alex Chris, came in from the outside and he spent like 6 to 9 months sort of getting, and they even like self-reported, like getting his arms around the
Right.
business. I'm like, well, investors don't have that kind of patience these days. And so I think if you're going to win, you need to understand a business deeply, which means you need to spend some time there, but it
Mhm.
also needs to be the right person too. So you don't want
Yeah.
to only look internally.
Right, right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these things play out. And if people are looking for quick wins, I guess the real question to ask these CEOs is, what's your version of the condiment bar? Bring it back, baby. Or PSLs for life. Double down
Exactly.
on the
PSLs
PSL.
24/7.
20 PSLs all day, baby, all day.
I know.
Yeah, all right. So we can get to what have we got coming up next, Rick?
I think next we are going to PayPal earnings. PayPal
Mm.
um, reported somewhat of a surprise earnings, and I've been probably one of the most challenging people on PayPal over the last year. And really it's like no fault of the company in the last year. It's really the fault of the company in the last 15 freaking years. Like
Yes.
PayPal has been asleep. It seems like the new CEO has woken up PayPal. He replaced like 2 or 3 levels of the
Yeah.
management team
Yeah.
below him, Alex Chris, the CEO. He's made a couple of cringe comments, but ultimately those comments make sense because he's at least being honest about what the company has done. So there are a couple of comments that I thought came out of the earnings that they reported this week. One is they do see the consumer as resilient, so transaction volumes are growing, and
Mhm.
their margin is expanding. So those are two things
Mhm.
that are good to see. PayPal is investing in their replacement for guest checkouts. So apparently over 60% of all checkouts on the web are guest checkouts. What are guest checkouts? Guest checkouts are ones where you essentially you don't have a card on file and you
Mhm.
don't have an account at the website you're shopping at. It's like everyone's at Amazon, you know, everything's on file, you just one
Right.
click. Well, the
Right.
reason you can one click is because everything's already stored there.
Right.
If it's a new brand, stuff isn't stored there. And so these payment companies, PayPal in particular, is one of the first people to say, like, pay with PayPal. All
Yep.
your stuff is on file here. And
Save
so,
your time. Yeah.
yeah, again, the challenge with PayPal is in the past 5 years, Shopify has
Drop
really
pay.
taken advantage of the fact that Shop Pay is in the market. They've created
Mhm.
their own payment network, which is
Mhm.
crazy to think as an e-commerce platform, you can create your own payment network that is now has over 200 million consumers transacting with
It is
them,
insane. Yeah.
which is really nuts. PayPal has introduced essentially, you know, you might call it a clone of Shop Pay
Mhm.
called Fastlane, which is kind of
Yep.
based on the PayPal technology. It's meant to recognize guest checkout shoppers. You know, if you've ever shopped with PayPal before, it could sort of pre-fill your information. The challenge that they're going to have with this is distribution. Why do I say distribution? PayPal announced in the call that they have 1,000 merchants that have signed up for this, and most of them are from big commerce. Now, they didn't release exact numbers of the mix from platforms. The challenge is like PayPal, like when you implement PayPal on your website, it's either provided out of the box from the platform
Right.
or a developer has to implement it. Well, if a developer has to implement it, then for PayPal to grow Fastlane, that's a huge issue because that's sort of like a one at a time deal.
Mhm.
I mean, do
Mhm.
you know how hard it
Yeah.
is? You remember
Oh,
like
yeah.
in your SaaS days
Yes.
implementing customers one at a time, whereas Shopify, what they have is a multi-tenant platform, millions of merchants. If they wanted to roll out, change, upgrade, improve Shop Pay, they can do it to millions at the same time.
Exactly. With
Anyway, I've been on
lots
my
of
soapbox
attention.
here.
No,
Clearly,
no,
I'm
no.
excited about
It's
this.
it's, like, super fascinating for me, and, because I love how you break down earnings. You always talk super clear, and you pull out the highlights, which is why you are called the notebook guy.
That's right. Too
And
much in the notebook.
yeah, no, but I think it is interesting, and the observations that you've had in the past are, PayPal hasn't necessarily monetized some of their assets in the best way. They have
That's right.
Braintree, they had Venmo. What is the latest in those worlds, to your point, and something that I know you track regularly? Like, what is gonna really unlock the probably massive opportunity that they have in those 2 areas?
Yeah, I think, they are introducing a product called Pay with Venmo, which I think is
Yep.
interesting because that is definitely a growing it's a known brand, it's trusted. It's the only way I pay my hairdresser, so there's
That's
that,
funny.
which everyone should know about. I think that's the only way anyone tips any hairdresser ever in America.
Yes, that and my favorite is, like, watching couples pass, money back and forth, like,
Right.
that's pretty fun because then you're like, "Oh, they have separate checking accounts. What the
Right.
heck?"
Right. The Venmo social feed is the most cringe thing
It
that you
really
could
is.
ever look at.
Yeah, yeah. If you really want FOMO, you can see what your friends did without you because they were splitting tabs and all these other things. It's like the millennial version of FOMO.
Exactly. So Venmo, they plan to reinvest in. Braintree is interesting because it's a very popular enterprise payment processor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're looking to invest in that and have a version of PayPal Fast Lanes backed by Braintree. That's significant because Shopify Shop Pay is backed by Stripe. And
Yeah.
although they have some partnership with PayPal, there's no Adyen version of Shopify Shop Pay. There's no
Yeah.
Braintree version of Shopify Shop Pay. And so splitting the world by platforms and distribution is, unless something is worked out from a partnership angle, it is definitely a flashpoint that I'm keeping an eye on in the e-commerce world.
Yeah. So PayPal has money. They have margins, although I know it's not as the world was not as sweet as it used to be. Uh, do you think that they need to subsidize and maybe take some margin hit initially just to get the distribution? People have used that playbook before, but you talk about being up against Shopify, Shop Pay, where you already have the attention of these millions of stores that when you roll out a release, you're golden.
Mhm.
Um, and I know when I shop on a Shopify store, if I'm not recognized, Shop Pay is going to be the first thing that pops up. So, what does PayPal need to do to get the demand or get the growth faster in this
Yeah.
versus going one by one from a merchant perspective?
Yeah, I mean, PayPal's biggest growth has come from a lot of its big customers over time. For instance, Uber is a big PayPal
Mhm.
customer,
Mhm.
Braintree, Delta, all the Wi-Fi on Delta is powered by PayPal, which is interesting. Airbnb is another big PayPal
Mhm.
customer. And so like there are just huge global marketplaces
Yeah.
type customers. And I think that's really, there are only so many of those things
Mhm.
though. And I think
Mhm.
those types of markets from a payments point of view are kind of inaccessible to a lot of other players. PayPal is
Yeah.
one of the few players that has this sort of global reach and combination of issuing, payment processor, and then sort of the relationship with the consumer, that, you don't have the same relationship with Visa, MasterCard, Amex that you
Sure.
do with PayPal.
Yeah. It will be fun to watch. Yeah, PayPal has struggled, like you said, and it's not necessarily the 1 year, it's been the 15-year journey. And we'll be watching this one really closely because they are still a behemoth in this payment space. They have a right to win. It's just, can they get there fast enough while you have all of these other competitors coming at them?
Yeah, for sure. I think the only thing that's happened recently is obviously Apple Pay has been rising. Apple recently opened up their payments ecosystem so that you can set other payment providers outside of your
Hmm.
Apple cards, credit cards, as so even PayPal could be taken at POS and you can use your Apple Pay in there. Now, that's not the default, and we all know the power
Sure.
of default behaviors in consumers. And so convincing consumers to load PayPal there, I think, is also interesting. Michael Cantrell saying some payment providers are leaning into identification network as a modernization play. Identification is, I would say, the key friction point that is being targeted by this guest checkout
Hmm.
product trend, which is fast PayPal Fastlane and Shop Pay are leaning into. And that's the same market that Bolt and Fast and some of these high flying startups that are now just like on the skids, to be honest with you. Um, say shot and missed at.
Yeah. I guess my last question is, should PayPal uh, be a key player? Like, would you think they go after like TikTok Shop or something like that in the way that Prime went after Meta with buy with Prime?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. I think that would be a good
Maybe
idea.
it's
Look, there are
Venmo.
only there are only so many growing channels. I think Venmo
Mhm.
would match with their audience really
Yeah.
well, and so
Yeah.
I would be bullish on that idea for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, in the spirit of your best days ever, we also had some other earnings reports that came out. Amazon and eBay. Um, let's talk about Amazon first. I mean, it was another stellar earnings for them.
Mhm.
You can see that immediately as like the stock market reacts. They had revenue growth of 12% year over year, very strong performance in e-commerce and AWS. AWS had revenue increase of about 16%. It feels like there is no slowing that train, which I know you have a lot of thoughts about. E-commerce sales growing 10%, which was boosted on, like, there was increased spending, improvements in fulfillment capabilities, and of course, as they have continued to be focused on profitability, their overall operating income improved. So, curious, what were some of the like ahas or the takeaways? Is it that you felt like were interesting in the Amazon earnings?
Yeah, there's so many stories to unpack here. AWS is its whole thread here that we should talk about. But I would say almost the other side that's a little bit below the radar of the Amazon earnings call is what I call the sort of the death of the convenience store or the death of your corner store.
Mm-hmm.
And Amazon, I feel like, and even in my own behavior, this bears out. We've seen all the troubles and bankruptcies and store closings from like Walgreens,
Yeah.
CVS,
Yeah.
all the corner stores in Manhattan are struggling. Why? You can get the stuff from Amazon in a day, and you know you're gonna get it. They're gonna show up at your house anyway.
Yeah.
And so the
And your
unit
merch
trend,
isn't locked up, right?
your merch isn't locked
You're
up.
not going into a store, chasing someone down. Oh, can you unlock this store? Can you unlock this store? So to your point, the spirit of the convenience has been completely eroded. And so
Right.
what's the value proposition of like walking in versus getting my toothpaste shipped in a day?
Yeah, so if you look at Amazon's earnings, their net sales grew for worldwide stores grew 7%, but units grew 12%. What does that
Mm,
mean? That means that they're having replenishable items that are sold first party, more first party than third party this time. So like the growth actually ticked down in third party unit sales, which is the first time we've seen that in many years.
right.
And where is that coming from? Health, beauty, everyday essentials. What are those things? Again, those are things I used to find in a convenience store. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the faster Amazon and this is Amazon's flywheel working, like we are literally seeing it in front of
The
like
Jassy, I mean, not
exactly.
the Bezos. Yeah.
We're seeing it here where Amazon shipping has gotten so fast
Mhm.
and these other experiences are low. Consumers are looking for deals. The faster Amazon ships, the more people buy. And so you see this disruption happening before our eyes. So I think to me, that's one of the first items
Yeah.
out of the earnings call. The second is really AWS, which is Amazon AWS margins are 38%. And they're growing now. This is $110 billion run rate business.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. They just keep like plugging that cash register.
It's unbelievable. And so Amazon has said they're going to invest $75 billion in CapEx this year.
Yeah.
Most of that with AWS, meaning new data centers, new servers, and new AI chips. There is so much fascinating discussion on the Amazon earnings call about what does AI mean? Does Amazon have the right
Yes.
strategy? What are
Yeah.
they hearing from their customers? Some of the anecdotes that I took away were just like so interesting and like gives you some idea why I love listening to these earnings calls. You just like hear what management thinks. You hear things you're not hearing anywhere else. Like this is really exclusive information in that everyone's talked about like, wow, AI is so expensive. Where are the ROI? Why is
Mhm.
that? Because to train an AI model takes so much processing power and
Yep.
resources. Amazon and Microsoft are talking about spinning up their own nuclear reactors for crying out loud to power the AI training models. Well, where do you think all that money's going to go for? It's going to go to AWS. And
For sure.
so a super interesting anecdote that came away from the call saying that because the cost to train AI models is so high, people really they love it, but they quickly realize it's so expensive. And
Mhm.
so Amazon is investing in their custom silicon. And Amazon has already gone back to their manufacturers 3 or 4 times to increase the production of Amazon own custom silicon. So even though Amazon is still like the best customer of Nvidia right now, who has most
Yeah.
of the AI chips, I would not feel so comfortable if I were NVIDIA right now with that news
No.
from Amazon.
No, you can't, because anytime Amazon, it's been proven time and time again, has an expense that's hitting the P&L, and they feel like they could tackle it better, they do. They've
Right.
done it with fulfillment, they've done it with freight, they've done it which I know all ties to fulfillment, but like the hosting, right? That really started with like they felt like they could do it better, and then they've spun out their own business. So I feel like you're right. Nvidia should be sweating it. And the other thing that Jassy said that was interesting as it relates to generative AI is it will become a multi-billion dollar, it's become a multi-billion dollar revenue run rate business within AWS,
Mm.
continues to grow at triple digit year over year percentages. That's their next thing. It's the train will not stop. And we know when they find fire, they throw gas on it, a lot of gas. So it feels like this is going to be a big investment area, like you said.
Yeah, the top quote from Jassy this call was that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So, do you think a company like Amazon is going to miss this or underinvest in this? They're going to spend probably $90 billion next year, I bet, in CapEx.
Hmm.
And a lot of this is gonna be related to AI, and so this could all explode in a ball of fire if everyone's like, "Oh, this AI thing is not gonna work out," but that doesn't seem to be what happened. Like, the hits keep coming faster. I feel
Right.
like throughout in the beginning of the year, it was more like, "Ah, where's the ROI?" Now, toward the end of the year, innovation keeps accelerating, and the results are starting to show up not only in the back office, but in the front office, meaning, like, the consumer experiences.
Yeah.
AI is increasing its, role.
So to do that, did you get any indication, either in this earning calls or previous earning
Mhm.
calls, of what they would shed or deprioritize to make that investment? Because they certainly don't want that. We are in the age of efficiency, as
Yeah.
you and Nick have said. Nobody wants to see that profitability bar go down, EBITDA margins go down. So, what are they going to do to offset or shed to like fund this investment?
Yeah, I think there are, 2 things. Number 1, if you saw that they just told everyone they're gonna get your ass back in the office. And so
Yeah.
everyone has to go back, and what does that mean? And in that announcement, they basically said that, like, 12% to, 20% of managers are gonna be eliminated. And
Mhm.
so, and again, this is with their corporate staff, not worldwide with the company, but,
Sure.
um that's number 1, and so they're gonna keep very tight reins on headcount, and so I think you're gonna
Mhm.
get back to some of the and other areas of the business are very frugal Amazon. Second
Mhm.
is they're continuing to invest in robotics so that even as their fulfillment centers get more efficient and faster, uh, there's more robots and fewer people for the
Mhm.
throughput that they're doing, and
Yeah.
so they're trying to bend that cost curve down so that the expense and they can leverage and sweat those sort of big fixed assets, which is their whole fulfillment network and all their data centers. Hiring is being held down. And you actually see some of this trend with Shopify as well. They've been very rigorous about keeping a certain cost profile using AI and other things, whether it's real or not. What is real is that they're not hiring as much as other companies.
Sure.
And so there is some benefit coming from that.
That's interesting. All right. We're going to pivot, probably a hard right turn, to go to eBay earnings. And eBay's had not so much of the same glitz and glory as the Amazon earnings was received. There were a couple of things that were notable. So the stock, first of all, declined by 8% following the earnings. It did not meet analyst
Woof.
expectations. Rough o'clock for those guys. The forward-looking revenue guidance, EBITDA projections were below market forecast. Words are hard after Halloween, guys. They're just hard. Currently, what we're seeing is um, the the eBay consumer is not as resilient, which was interesting. So
Mm.
they were talking about some hurricane issues, other things that were hitting that eBay consumer that
There's
essentially
like a
didn't.
litany of excuses, weren't they? Like, what were some of the other
Yeah.
excuses they talked about?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was for sure the hurricanes, for sure the consumer spending.
Like the
The
heat.
the
Yeah,
heat.
they were blaming.
I mean, they were kind of on the Macy's track. The weather was bad, guys. We couldn't sell
Right.
coats. It was too hot today. So we can't sell our coats. So yeah, I think that there were a couple of things that came in the eBay cause for why we missed our forecast. But for me, the thing is, it's a bit more of the same, right? I don't
Mm,
hear anything different in that's saying eBay isn't a place where a lot of people, maybe less people, shop one time a year to find something that is hard to find, right?
mm,
That's really just been the marker of eBay, the history of eBay. But now the competitors have gotten tighter. There have been more marketplaces because eBay hasn't maintained trust. They have eroded even maybe some of goodwill with sellers because they've not provided the same level of programs fast enough that Amazon has to demand attention and bring ultimately revenue and opportunity. And so you lose inventory, you lose trust with your buyers. These new marketplaces pop up over time that erode key categories you should be winning in, like the like StockX, right? Goat, some of
mhm.
the collectible sneakers,
Yeah, the
collectible
Poshmarks and the
cards,
thread
your
auction
Poshmarks
things.
and your apparel. Um, I mean, probably auto's one of the lifebloods of the
Right.
marketplace that continues. So I guess really is eBay on this train of it will continue to be death by a thousand cuts, or do you see glimmers of hope here?
Yeah, look, I think eBay is not doing anything to fundamentally transform itself. And so that means to me that it will continue to be on the same trajectory. At what I've seen from consumers and these marketplaces in the last 10 years is that these upstart marketplaces, what have they done? They have
Yeah.
traded selection for experience, meaning
Hmm.
like the items are a little bit higher quality. If you go to Real Real or um, sites like this,
Yep.
you're not gonna get a wrinkled item that shows up in a paper bag from some random eBay seller. You're gonna get something that's a little bit more vetted, and the quality is gonna be somewhat higher. While there might be more items on eBay, like, you're gonna trust them just that much less, and the buyer
Yeah.
experience is gonna be easier. And so, in this sort of pre-loved marketplaces, that eBay is trying to be, the trust factor has eroded pricing, and I think that has been the continual that with combined with the consumer trading down, that is placing continual pressure in a downward direction on eBay's GMV numbers,
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the categories they said they're focused on, are luxury goods, collectible sneakers, and auto parts. Outside of auto, collectible sneakers and luxury goods should have been continued cash cows for the company. We've
Mhm.
talked about why that they've lost some of that market share. I think the challenge in winning it back goes to what you just said, and they haven't done enough to bring up the next generation of consumers to
Mm.
even think that eBay is a place to find these products that is interesting. And so I just worry about if those are the two categories, which I'm not saying they're the wrong categories. They should be the ones they win. What is going to change in the shopping experience that will have a Gen Zer even consider eBay from the beginning?
Yeah, look, there's nothing transformational happening about the eBay shopping experience that
Yeah,
takes into it anything like social commerce, video. Like eBay is just nowhere on any of these topics. And
right.
frankly, in 2024, to say that that eBay cannot, there's no video commerce component to eBay is embarrassing.
Yeah,
Particularly when like you said, the next generation of consumer, eBay is cringe.
it's cringe.
It
Yeah,
is, it's so
didn't something
bad.
wasn't that like on a show?
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other part is, profitability took a hit, right? And that's always been the moniker, I think that's kinda at least helped the stock stay somewhat stable,
Right.
was there's hey, well, EBIT is always good, and they continue to throw
Yeah.
off
It's a free cash
profit.
flow
Yeah,
machine.
free cash flow machine. Like we'll play the long game, for those investors. And I'm not saying your company should live or die by what the investors say, but the reality is in a public market, you are judged every quarter. And when the one key element that has been your, okay, well, we'll stay in it, starts to erode, like, what
Right.
does that actually mean?
Yeah. It means that you're on the struggle bus. That's what it means. And so at the end of the day, one of the challenges eBay has is so their tech is so old. Their experience is so old and their demographics are, I think, aging over time. And so they need to really transform their experience, introduce themselves to a new generation of consumer. The current leadership, while they're doing better than the previous leadership, it's almost like the old PayPal scenario where, like, to say you're the best eBay CEO in the last 15 years is faint praise at best. And we saw that similar on the PayPal side where, like, yeah, great, you're the best PayPal CEO in the last 15 years. Like, that's like water level. Like,
Right,
that's
right.
not gonna get you to the promised land.
Yeah. All right, Linda, we will be watching this one for sure. When will eBay go eBuy? I like the pun there.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up on the earnings, you guys. We will continue to keep our eyes not only on these companies, but Rick's got a laundry list of people that we focus on and look at. Excited to break down those companies. And we're going to now switch gears to bring on Nick Kaplan, our resident expert on all things happening in the commerce industry. Nick, welcome. Kaplan's Corner. What you got to break down
Hello.
for us today?
Well, I've learned something that eBay is still around. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. When is the last time you shopped on eBay? Inquiring minds want to know.
Never.
Never. You never
I don't,
have.
I don't know that I've ever actually made a purchase on eBay. I'm being honest.
Wow.
He's
I've
too
sold-
highbrow. He's
I've
too
sold
highbrow.
things on eBay. When we first started a store, Fashion to Figure, long ago, everyone would ship us hangers, and they weren't the hangers we used in the store. And I realized there was a market for a secondary market, so I would sell hangers.
Look at you adding to that P&L.
I mean, I'm no Eric
Look at what
Huberman,
happened.
but
Yeah.
And by the way, Rick, barber, not hairdresser. You're a barber guy. I can see that, not a hairdresser.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Anywho, let's enter the conversation. Let's talk about OpenAI's news from yesterday. There was a press release that went out that talked about OpenAI entering conversational search. Surprise nobody. Boo, Google. Search is about ads. We all know that. It's not really efficiency, but Google now has a monopoly, according to our friends at the Justice Department. And so, if we look back to Google's release this week, and Sundar said, in terms of their elevating away from search traditionally in ads into AI and search, from their earnings release, which I encourage everybody to take a look at. It was really interesting on the 29th, that people are searching a lot longer and asking more complex questions. So I think that search is today, it's a $204 billion business, and it's heading to $370 billion in 2031. Yowza. So what does it mean? What does it mean for ChatGPT? I mean, not a lot. They're evolving their product, but it's a cool move. It's a necessary move. But is it like a new move? Not really, right? I think I was looking around searching and found a really interesting article, a blog called Search Engine Land, which actually has like a ton of great content. But in 2013, they wrote an article about conversational search and Google. And to read a quote, that it's not the magic. What's really special is that you can continue your conversation by asking further questions. 11 years later, a lot has happened. It's a lifetime in tech. So we need not look further than Moore's Law to understand how we've sort of evolved, how things have doubled and doubled and doubled, and algorithms are doubling and evolving, and what that does to search. And so, as we look at like math, knowledge equals frequency over time, and we as an industry are just better. It's really not the search engines and conversation today that's necessarily changing so much as it's the consumer. and like how time is our most important commodity. We're in this age of efficiency we've talked about. People, well, Amazon people are going back to work 5 days a week. Lots of people don't. Is the 3-hour commute door to door for the total day, 5 days a week, worth it? No, not really. And can we do it? Yes. Better? Sure. So enter conversational. What does that mean? So like, I don't want to seek and discover. I don't want to just like type in, I want let's go to the search of yesterday, quilted sweatshirt. This is a real scenario. I don't want to do that. I want to type in, I want a blue quilted sweatshirt to wear in my office, but cool enough to wear out on a business dinner, but functional enough to wear on the weekends when I'm out playing soccer with my kids. And the search comes back. And then I want to be able to evolve and speak into that search. And like, those are the rules of engagement, how they're changing today in the customer journey. And so customers are everywhere. Commerce is anywhere. And that is a lot about how this, like, there are doors on the internet. Like the doors open on your site, page to page to page. But guess what? You can exit from your site to another site to another site. That search bar at the top does that. And that is how people behave now. Why the conversational component of commerce, which you're going to hear a lot more about conversational commerce, but conversational search matters so much. So like, you need to contemplate search. You need to consider it about conversational, not just on your site, but like how you're looking at it strategically. The stakes are high. And in this world with this consumer, be good or be gone. The days of just like throwing SEO over the fence to an agency and being like, oh, someone's dealing with SEO or H1 tags or those, they're over. Are you discussing search internally? How about like your PIM? PIM is a 3-letter word that can mask as a 4-letter word sometimes, but attributes and thoughts about search and what does your commerce look like in your journey going forward? Is anyone in your team like researching? Hopefully, because if the answer to any of these questions is no, well, you may want to start the conversation before it starts and happens without you. So my advice for the day is be really aware of conversational search and be looking at it and putting on your radar. And that, my friends, is the Halloween version of Kaplan's Corner.
Well done, my friend. You are not spooky or scary at all. You just kind of keep up in the game with this content. I agree with Linda. You need your own YouTube channel, but we're not going to let that happen because
No.
we're keeping you right here. We're keeping you right here, friend. And I guess
the RMW family is strong.
Yeah, it sure is. I guess I actually know now what to get you for Christmas. Quilted sweatshirt is on the list.
Top of the list.
I got one. I got it too, and I got it from Amazon. And my wife now says it's pilling. I've worn it like 12 times, and I can't wear it anymore. So going to go back to your search, your eBay, and like kind of what you know. I think quality equals the intersection of price and value.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I think that's a great one to end on. If you guys are good with it, we have had an amazing show.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Time.
It's time to dance. We're going to throw it down the Halloween style, post-Halloween style. Here we go, guys. Get ready.